Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend Mike.
Hey!
So today, we are going with episode 7 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is titled...
We figure out the plot of this story, kind of? No, I'm just kidding. We find out the truth, sort of.
We found out the truth. And this is the penultimate episode here, so one more episode after this for talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympians, at least for season 1, and we'll get into it starting now. But first, we're going to give out the typical reminders. Starting in a minute. The typical reminders are, if you want to talk to us, talk at the show, we're on Instagram, which is @FantasyRewindPod. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, which is @FantasyRewind. Or you could just send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. All right, no more blabbing. Mike, let's dive into this rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. All right, Dylan. So this episode it's pretty good. I mean, there's quite a bit of revelation, or there's quite a few revelations. We get a couple nice Greek myths here interwoven in. We get to see the underworld, Cerberus, the good boy that he is, Hades. Ares makes an appearance right at the end, again. We get to see the ferryman, Chiron, or whatever his name is. We're just going to call him the ferryman. And we get a lot in this episode. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go through some of the major plot points, and then we'll kind of dive into our thoughts on some of it. And I'm going to be really interested to hear some of what you felt with the whole Shoes taking Grover and some of your thoughts with that, because for me, I knew it was coming, knew it was going to happen, so I always like hearing, somebody who wasn't expecting it and kind of what their thoughts were at that moment. But all right, so in this episode, we start off with meeting a Greek myth of sorts, one that I actually wasn't aware of until I read the book, and it's Procrustes, who is another son of Poseidon, and he looks a little washed up. But he's a mattress salesman in...
A waterbed salesman.
Waterbed salesman IRL, in real life. The waterbed being kind of like a nice callback to Poseidon. The bed being because Procrustes would trap travelers in an iron bed and either stretch them to the correct size or chop them down to size if they were too tall. And it's sort of a trap, and there's an entrance to the underworld in the back. Percy, Annabeth, and Grover trap Procrustes instead and get past him to get to the underworld. Love when they opened up the Narnia cabinet, if you will, to the underworld, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, it stinks." But then after they decide to go down to the underworld, they have to try to get across with the ferryman. To pay. They get chased around by Cerberus. That was a pretty fun scene. I thought Cerberus looked awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I think they really took their money and they were like throwing it down for this episode, because the underworld, all of it, I thought looked beautiful. But Cerberus chases him around for a little bit. Annabeth loses one of the pearls on her way up, or Grover does. One of them does. And that's a problem, because those pearls were going to take him right on up out of the underworld, and there was an extra one for Percy's mom. After they elude Cerberus, they get to Asphodel Fields, and Annabeth gets trapped here, this is new. This is different from the book. But in Asphodel Fields, I like how they had like the people as trees, because that's kind of how it's described. It's fields of regret. And Annabeth gets trapped because she regrets something. I forget what they said. I don't know.
I think she regrets her other friend dying, who getting turned into a tree.
Which kind of makes sense. I feel like they've been really trying to interweave like her relationship with Thalia, and that'll make more sense in future seasons. But yeah, that is correct. And unlike in the books, she gets trapped and she uses the pearl to escape early. After that, both Percy and Grover kind of end up in this desolate desert where you have Hades' like castle upside down facing the ground, which really looks really cool. And before they're going to reach it, all of a sudden the flying shoes that Grover's been wearing starts to go off, and they are pulling him towards this big black pit, which is Tartarus, the deepest, darkest prison in the underworld. Oh, what could it be pulling him towards? And lo and behold, once they rescue Grover before he falls in, they find in the backpack nothing other than the Master Bolt. Zeus's Master Bolt. How did it get there?
You mean the backpack that Ares gave them?
Yes. And so they're kind of like, huh, Ares must have put it in there or something. They decide to go see Hades anyway, even though they do have the Master Bolt, because obviously they still want to get Percy's mom, right? Mm-hmm. So that is a big deal there. They go in to see Hades, and I'm not sure who the actor is, and I should have looked that up before us having this conversation, but I thought he did a really nice job of playing Hades. Very personable, still kind of like almost looked a little like kind of pale, but I really liked the job he did. I thought he had a nice mix of humor and not being imposing. And when you think about Hades, you don't really think about imposing. I mean, it was nice though that they had like the two chairs, one for him and one for Persephone, and it was a nice touch. I mean, the underworld, the kingdom itself looked really cool. He invited Percy up. They went behind this like the thrones, and there's like a couch and stuff to sit on that actually looks comfortable. So that's kind of a little funny, right? That, you know, they go to that and it's there. But
so the actor's name is J. Duplass.
J. Duplass. Anyway, thought he did a good job. They kind of talk, and you know, Hades obviously didn't steal the Master Bolt, and but he's telling them that they stole the Helm of Darkness, which is his helm that allows him to go invisible. And he and Percy strike a deal that if Percy brings him his Helm of Darkness, he'll let his mom free. Sorts. So after they strike that deal, and after like they've kind of figured out that Kronos and Ares conspired to steal the bolt and Hades' Helm of Darkness, using Hades' Helm of Darkness, they use the pearls to escape the underworld, leaving Percy's mom behind. They go up. Ares is there waiting, and Percy, after a flashback of him and our best friend, or their best friend, the son of Hermes,
Luke.
They have a flashback there with Luke and Percy kind of training together. He decides to challenge Ares to single duel. And that's kind of how our episode ends. Like, they're going to fight. Whoever wins gets the Helm of Darkness and the Master Bolt, presumably. And it's not to the death, it's just the first one to bleed.
Right, first blood.
So, and Percy has this plan to save his mom. It's kind of episode 7. I mean, we get everything kind of comes together nicely in episode 8, but we'll be talking about that next week. So, Dylan, episode 7 here. What's some things you liked that stuck out to you? Some things you were maybe still questioning or you thought were kind of odd choices?
Yeah, I mean, all in all, I thought this was a very strong episode. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, what you said about, like, you could see the money being spent for this one. The underworld itself looked awesome. The actor they had playing Hades was good. Like, the Cerberus looked awesome as well. Like, everything about the underworld was, like, top-notch. It was great. Loved it all. The visual of the upside-down castle was really cool as well. And it really just reminded me also of a completely unrelated show of Sandman. Because, like, it just kind of reminded me of that type of, like, style that they were hitting on there with a dream world for Dream.
Yeah, I can't wait for season 2.
Right?
Such a great
But
show.
anyways, I also thought, though, that it was really interesting how they had the Percy's friend there. I'm blanking on her name now. Annabeth. How they had Annabeth fall, basically, to her regrets. And I think it was due to Thalia, like I had mentioned there, but I just thought it was an interesting choice that, like, they talk about how all the people that are part of the forest there fall, like, into treedom because they have so many regrets and everything. And then you see Annabeth slowly transforming as well and falling prey to this. And while it like had been implied throughout the entire season so far that Thalia, Luke, and Annabeth were all really close friends and everything, I did not expect her to fall prey to that trap in the underworld there. And you saying that was a show exclusive makes total sense, because I didn't necessarily see that happening. So it not being in the books, not a big deal at all. But the one piece I want to make sure that we do mention is, you mentioned Tartarus, and just like Tartarus is where the Titans are imprisoned after Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus all teamed up to defeat their father, Kronos, the lord of the Titans. They imprisoned him, Kronos, and all of the Titans in Tartarus, which is that giant chasm, basically banished away from Olympus, away from the world, where they supposedly can't hurt anyone anymore. But we had that big revelation where it was like, oh my god, Ares, that treacherous little rat. He took the lightning bolt, gave it to Percy, and tried to lure him in there. So it was all like this big scheme to get Percy to go to the underworld, to get close to Tartarus, to hopefully be pulled in by the rogue shoes, which really makes you question, why the shoes? Was Hermes involved? Was Luke involved? What's going on with this? Were the shoes like bewitched by some monster we didn't see yet? What's going on? Now, I haven't read the books for Percy Jackson and the Olympians like Mike has, but I have watched the movies that Mike denies exist. So I vaguely knew,
I forgot about
the general gist of the story about what would probably be happening in this season.
Fine.
So the general gist, Mike, not like everything being the same.
Yeah. As long as you don't bring up the second movie to me, we're good.
I don't even remember the second movie.
Yeah,
I know I watched it.
Hot garbage.
But my favorite part, though, of the underworld battle was just or not even a battle in the underworld, was just the meeting between Hades and Percy. Mm-hmm. And why that's one of my favorite parts of the episode was because when Percy originally offers Hades the lightning bolt, he's like, what do I want with that? That's my brother's toy. Like, go take it to him. He might want it. I don't want this. And then Percy talks about Kronos and talks about how he's been seeing visions of Kronos and how he's trying to get free. And Hades is like, well, on second thought, maybe I will take that lightning bolt.
Ask me for Sanctuary.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll give it to your two friends, too.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how Percy basically talks Hades into wanting the Master Bolt, into the lightning bolt. But Percy, of course, dips out of there with the pearl, with Grover, before anything nefarious happens in the underworld. But he, like you said, he does put in a deal with Hades about being able to get Hades' helm in exchange for the mom. And that's when he teleports back and goes to Ares. And to me, just like the arrogance, first of all, of challenging the god of war to a single combat when you're like 12, oh my gosh, I was shocked when that happened. I was like, wait, what? What is Percy thinking? Like, what?
Yeah.
So that part caught me by surprise. But we'll see the results of that in the next episode. Anything you want to talk about for this, Mike, or anything you want to talk about your thoughts for this one?
I would agree with you about that conversation between Hades and Percy. I really liked the puzzle pieces kind of coming together, most of them, and kind of the decision being made, Percy's sort of decision being made that he was going to leave his mom behind in order to try to do the right thing, not just for her, but for everyone.
Right, for the whole world.
He put aside his own personal goals for a minute to get something done that could help everybody. And I think that was really great, because he has been very single-minded in that intent, and rightfully so. But I think that showed maturity on his part and growth. So that was pretty cool to see. I did like the flashback to Luke and kind of their sword fight, because while it made it seem like he was he was really only at camp for 2 days, he has grown and he had some training and interaction. I know it kind of went really quick, but because when you talk about him facing off a god, like it's like, oh yeah, how is he gonna?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my thought was, what the heck are they doing here? Mm-hmm. This kid was in camp for the blink of an eye and barely learned how to hold a sword and couldn't even beat Clarice without the help of his Poseidon powers. How is he going to take on her dad, the god of war himself? I was like, this is a little much.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, we'll be able to talk more about like their battle next episode, but I liked all of that, and I'm really excited to actually talk about episode 8 because that's where a lot of the meat comes in for this season. And I think they did a nice job with this series, like really building up to this last episode and putting everything kind of together in the last episode. It made it kind of hard to talk about each episode individually, but
it feels like a finale.
Yeah, it does feel like a finale and not kind of like Shadow and Bone where some of those episodes just felt like, okay. Like, why did I kind of watch that, right? But this felt very much like it everything built towards the last episode. And so that was really nice. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. The Hades conversation, the growth from Percy, the visuals, we already talked about that a few times, but I thought it looked stunning. Sure. Really appreciated that. Really thought they did it justice in a lot of ways. And
I mean, one thing I will say as well is, like, we have to remember that these are child actors that we're seeing a lot here, but like, I didn't feel like the pains of watching a child actor in this episode as I did in a couple of the other ones. So like, I think that just the characters in general have just gotten better and better as this season's gone along. So no complaints from me on that front.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're not going to stick around here and mumble back and forth anymore. So we're going to get on out of here and get right into episode 8 for you guys. And this is going to be Two Nerds signing off. See ya.
See ya.